On today's podcast episode, I'm chatting with my good friend Nichole Smith, and we are talking all about a joy first life and how that translates into our business and why it's critically important to bring more joy into our business. I'm Nicole Begley, a zoological animal trainer turned pet and family photographer. Back in 2010, I embarked on my own adventure in photography, transforming a bootstrapping startup into a thriving six-figure business by 2012. Since then, my mission has been to empower photographers like you, sharing the knowledge and strategies that have helped me help thousands of photographers build their own profitable businesses. I believe that achieving $2,000 to $3,000 sales is your fastest route to six-figure businesses, that any technically proficient photographer can consistently hit four-figure sales, and no matter if you want photography to be your full-time passion or a part-time pursuit, profitability is possible. If you're a portrait photographer aspiring to craft a business that aligns perfectly with the life you envision, then you're in exactly the right place. With over 350,000 downloads, welcome to the Freedom Focused Photography Podcast. Welcome back to the Freedom Focused Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Begley, and today we have Nichole Smith. The Nics are in the house.
Double Nick.
The Nick.
Nick.
We were actually talking about so for you guys, my audience, probably aware that we have the Commercial Pet Photography Academy, where we help pet photographers break into the commercial space. And we were talking about, like, for this year of starting to utilize AI a little bit more, just to help students get the information immediately from wherever it is in the course. So we're like going to load it up with all the information and the question and answer calls we have, and we're going to call it the Nick. So
the Nick
anyway,
Nick. It's the Nick
coming to a Kajabi portal near you.
24/7 coach from the Knicks.
Of course, there'll still be the community and stuff, but we're like, oh, that could help people get like immediate answers a little bit faster. But sure. Anyway, I digress. That was not planned. I had to share what the Nick was and why we were laughing. But actually, laughing is an important part of all the things going on. Nick, you have been, you started pet photography before pet photography was a thing.
Mm-hmm. Like way before.
2005?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Like 20 years ago. What?
This
Insane.
is my 20-year anniversary in business. Yep.
It's nuts. And so you were doing pet photography and also graphic design, branding type work, which you are brilliant at. If you guys have seen the Freedom Focus formula branding, including the new branding for this Freedom Focus Photography podcast, you are witnessing the incredible work of Nic, because I hired her, when she brought out magic that I didn't even know that there was, and it was beyond perfect. So
it was really fun project.
I love it. So anyway, all that to say that your place of expertise, I think, is definitely kind of in this branding and marketing and sales, helping businesses make more money through those channels. And an important piece of that is also living a joy first life. So tell us a little bit about kind of how you started transition and still focusing on all that branding and marketing stuff, but having this joy first piece to it now.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. Obviously, choosing to be a pet photographer, first of all, is just a joy first decision, isn't it? Like, that is a brave, bold thing to do. And lots of people, even 20 years on, are probably telling you that you're crazy for having that focus. So it was always just a part of my DNA to kind of make choices in a way that supported my joy. But a lot of things have happened over the years. So as you mentioned, I've been in photography, branding, marketing for almost 20 years. And what I realized looking back, it's always clear, in retrospect. But during that time, especially that first decade, I was doing so much photography and design for mainly pet brands. I was in the pet niche pretty strongly, got a lot of credibility there, and worked with all the major players. But I was also doing stuff in some sort of joy adjacent categories like wine, hospitality, spa, travel, physical products. And what I realized looking back is what I got really good at was selling, communicating, capturing, and understanding joy and how to make people feel good in order to sell to them, which sounds obvious, but it's not common. What
Mhm,
most people use to sell, because it is 2.5 times more effective, is fear, scarcity,
mhm,
FOMO, right? And to the extremes of basically making you believe that you're not good enough in order for you to want to need the thing that we sell.
mm,
And I've just never, we all use some like urgency and scarcity with deadlines and things in our brands, but I've just never been on the train of making you feel like shit in order to buy something from me. Like, and that's something I've really heard resonate deeply with all the pet photographers and other
mhm,
brands and clients that I've worked with, is that most of us don't align with having to do that, and we call it manipulative, and we feel really resistant to doing that. And I think there's a reason that we feel that resistance. The problem comes in the fact that it does work better. So people who
mhm,
do it get rewarded with those, seven-figure launches and like, these corporations that we see kind of running the country, because it is effective, but you don't have to operate that way. And
mhm,
alongside learning and realizing that that's what I was doing, also entrepreneuring is hard, right? Like, I burnt out before I was 30. Like, it's hard, and it's hard when you're in a service business, especially. And so, because when I started my business, I immediately got into a lawsuit. I had to sue someone, and then I won, but then they went bankrupt. So I never got paid, and was in that for 4 years, and then had all these other dramas that I was dealing with. I had to make a choice pretty early on about how I was going to live my life, and what I was going to do and not do. And I just decided early on, I'm going to trust people. I'm not going to become jaded. I'm going
mhm,
to continue to collaborate and have partnerships. And I am going to have to make decisions where I put joy first, because it's just, life is so short, and it's just
mhm,
not worth it to feel this bad all the time. And so I luckily got that. I got that like awareness really early from that early burnout. And ever since, not only have I been living my life that way, but I've been trying to help entrepreneurs find more freedom and fulfillment through running their own businesses, which, as we know, is not the default, right? Like, that's not
right.
the obvious thing that happens. What often happens is the opposite of that, where we do burn out, we give too much, we stress, etc. And it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And we were talking about this on your podcast, but the importance of just really following your passion and your joy. We were just talking about just my journey, and I left college, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh, you should be a doctor or a lawyer," or "Oh, you love animals, you should be a veterinarian." And I was like, "Nah, I'm going to be a zookeeper and make like $30,000. It's cool, it's fine." And I did it for 13 years, and I loved it. I loved it, and, like, I was still able to do all the things I wanted to do. I was able to travel because I was on the board of an organization, and the aviary sent me to South Africa, and so I was still able to do all these things through my life. And then, then I switched to photography because I wanted some more entrepreneurship opportunities around 2010. And then, now I have the conservation fund, which kind of brings it all back circle. And it's just none of those things would have happened if I didn't allow myself to choose a joy first job. Like, I could have suffered through vet school and gone and been a vet, and I don't know if you guys know, but it's one of the like biggest mental health professions. Veterinarians have the highest suicide rate, so be kind to your vet. And now thinking about it with my personality, we were talking about, you're like, what does your typical day look like? I'm like, nothing's the same, because I've realized that I cannot do repetitive things. And when I go to the doctor, and like, we need doctors, thank God some people can do that. Like, the thought of going and seeing rooms all day, every day for 40 years, I'm like, oh my God, I don't care how much money I'm making. There's no way I could do that. I would literally go mad. So, long story short, I think there's just so much importance in choosing joy, and then knowing, having the faith. I think it goes hand in hand with making the conscious decision to choose what you love and what you're interested in, and the unwavering belief that it'll work out, that this is
Yeah.
for your best and there's a way to do this. So,
100%.
yeah.
And I think one thing I just wanna say, because I know this will resonate with so many of the people listening, is so many of us felt like we had to become a veterinarian because we were a little person who loved animals, and that was the only way to, quote, unquote, "not be a starving artist,"
Yeah, right.
right? So if you're young, creative, love animals, you're like, "Oh, well, I guess I'll have to pack it all in and be a vet." And I had the the luxury of working at a vet clinic for years and years when I was between 8th grade and my senior year in high school. On the vet track, like, I
Mhm.
realized, "Oh, I'm really creative, don't wanna be a starving artist, guess I'll have to be a vet." Um, along the way in high school, discovered photography and started photographing all the animals in the vet
Mhm.
clinic and stuff, and I had a sit down with the vet when I was in my senior year of high school, getting ready to choose colleges, the whole lot, and showed her these photos, and she was like, "These are really good. You realize you're not gonna have time to do this in school." And I was like, "Of course I will. Electives." She was like, "No, no, 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 no. All your electives are gonna be math and science. Math
Uh-huh.
and science and more math and more science." And I was like, "I don't even like math and science." She was like, "What are you doing?" And there was a couple of other experiences at the clinic that were really tragic and so sad, and it was just like, I don't wanna play God. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want math and science, and I don't want this job. This job sucks. Like, I don't
Yeah.
wanna do this. So, I am willing to step out into the void, and maybe I will be a starving artist, but I know I'll be happy, and I know I'm good at this. And I think I was lucky enough to have support in my life of
Mhm.
making that choice. I know a lot of kids don't because our parents are so scared about our
Mhm.
well-being, and, so I did have support for that kind of. Um, but I think for me, the core of this joy thing is, if you had to like put it into one little nugget, it's being willing to make decisions from a place of joy instead of a place of fear. And when you
Mhm.
feel like you're really struggling with a choice and you know that a lot of that struggle is because you're afraid, you have to immediately walk in the opposite direction of that fear and go towards the thing. Like you had said before, lean in, you've
Mhm.
got to lean into passion. And it might not work out either way. There's no guarantee that if you do the quote unquote safe thing,
Mhm.
that it's going to be fine, right? Like life is full of chaos and change. And like, if there's one thing I've learned in 20 years, it's yeah, you got to just take that step and take it faster into joy and certainly away from fear.
Mhm. That is a great point because any decision made out of fear is often not the right decision. Maybe it's a band-aid for the short term, but it doesn't actually get you closer to where you want to be long term or what your dharma, your like life goal, the reason that you're here is. So, can you maybe share a little bit of what what it looks like for you maybe, or are there any experiences you can think of to help people kind of clarify of like what does making a decision out of fear look like versus what does making a decision out of joy look like?
Such a good question. I think there's the micro decisions and then there's the big ones, right?
Mhm.
And I find for me, and this I think is especially true like post pandemic when we've been inside, and I am neurodivergent and I have a lot of anxiety generally. But after COVID, I realized that I had huge social anxiety. Like I had had total control of my space for so long, and I'm really, I have a lot of sensory stuff, so I'm really sensitive to sound and noise and people in general. Um, and I noticed how heightened that was because I had had such control. I was so
Mhm.
afraid of letting go of any of that control, and any variable felt so scary to me.
Mhm.
And it's a real weird fear where it's like on one level, it's nothing, but on another level, it's in your entire body, so it's
Mhm.
something. And I noticed I was making weird decisions about, like, not leaving the house because I didn't know if I'd have a parking spot, or, like, I was afraid of these, like, little frictions in general social
Mhm.
interaction, and I was, like, going wildly out of my way to avoid that because of discomfort.
Yeah.
And one of the most important things about this is I'm writing a book right now about joy and about these joy decision making, and one of my favorite things that has come up in the research is that almost always our greatest joy is a part of or after or mixed up with some really extreme discomfort. So
Mm.
if you think about like all your favorite things that you've achieved in your life, like most of them were really fucking hard. Like, right? Like
Mhm.
they didn't
Mhm.
come easy, or seeing someone you haven't seen for a long time, or getting something you didn't expect to get. Like a lot of our joy comes from being in the discomfort. And it is that discomfort that creates the context for joy to feel as good as it does. And I think when I talk about joy and putting joy first, people really mistake that often for like hedonism and just
Mhm.
like pursuing pleasure above all else. But the reality is, like, pleasure isn't that great after that long. We get really
Mhm.
bored. What we
Mhm.
need is meaning, right? We need it to be meaningful. And even if it's hard or painful, as long as it's meaning, it
Mhm.
has purpose, it is a potential source of joy for us. So, one of the invitations I love to make to people when I talk about this is think about the difference between discomfort and truly being unsafe. I think
Mhm.
all the signals in our body when we're uncomfortable tell us we're not safe and to fix it. Fix it, fix it, fix it. Something is wrong, fix it. And I think the more privilege we have, the more comfort we have, the more of this we probably experience because we're so not used to being
Mhm.
uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And actually, one of the things I'm doing now is leaning into that discomfort and being like, I'm okay. This is okay. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to change it. I just need to figure out how to be with it. And
Mhm.
that's not something I've ever been good at. Like I this comes from a person who like would avoid ever having wet socks or being too tired or having to walk too far or like I've always been really protective of my comfort. And I think it's a really good exercise to lean into that discomfort. We were just talking earlier about how I'm about to go on this long haul flight in coach. I have like a really sore tailbone, so sitting in crappy seats is really uncomfortable for me. And like on the one hand, I'm like, oh, I wish I could just upgrade. But I'm going with my husband and he doesn't fly business. And so like I have to just deal with it. And so I'm processing all of this stuff. And oftentimes, like that anxiety and that discomfort will completely distract me from even being present in the
Mm.
experience or enjoying myself.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's learning how to like acknowledge the discomfort, acknowledge I don't like it, but I'm not going to spend my time between now and then dreading it. I'm not going to spend my time on the flight hating it. I'm not going to be,
Mhm.
and so I think the first piece of it is being willing to get more uncomfortable. That's the first part. And if you are more accustomed to being uncomfortable, that fear doesn't feel so scary. And it
Mm.
really lowers the bar. It makes it much easier to lean into the joy because you're not so terrified of what could go wrong. You're not as terrified of
Mm.
being uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
the joy choice feels a little bit more obvious because you could be uncomfortable and you can survive.
Mhm. I love that, and it actually, as you were talking, made me think of a fairly recent, I guess it was like 2 years ago, because a lot of people don't realize I used to be, not anxious, but definitely not comfortable flyer. Like, what was that noise?
Really?
Yeah, yeah, like, I would have literally going to the airport even for but especially a long haul flight, I would just be going in, like, my husband's driving the airport, and I would just, like, have this, like, tightness in my chest of, like, "Oh, okay." Like, and even then it was starting to happen even for, like, domestic flights, and it was just, like, I'd pull into the airport, and at the same time, like, I still loved being, like, I felt so expansive once we were in the plane and I was working or going to the airport lounge, and I loved what the travel gave me, but, like, I would still have this anxiety, just, like, just tightness in my chest pulling in. And then my brother's a pilot, so I would ask him, like, whenever anything, I'd be like, "My plane did this, why did it do that?" But so I know enough to be dangerous. and, and I was flying to I had a mastermind meeting in Bozeman, and I was flying in or the next day, and I looked at the weather forecast for Bozeman, and it was a wind warning. And I was like, "Oh, great." And so then I look up what heading the runway's at, what direction the winds are coming. I'm like, "Oh my god, it's going to be like 40-mile-per-hour winds, and planes can only land in 40-mile crosswinds." Like, oh, and like I worked myself up into this whole entire thing, and it was like basically, Nicole, are you gonna go on the plane or not? So I did. I got on the plane.
Oh my
It
God.
was insane. It was so bumpy coming through the mountains through Bozeman. And like that was kind of okay. And then we got like there's the mountains, and then Bozeman's kind of in this valley. And then it came in, and it was like George Bush landing in Iraq. It was like they just went in the plane and like spiraled down to the runway. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So anyway, we landed and it was fine. So that
We're
just
still
goes
here
to
to tell the
show
tale.
that just goes to show like how insane I would kind of like start digging down this thing. So there was, I mean, I never labeled myself as an anxious purchase, but I think those are signs of anxiety that I just exhibited.
You think?
Maybe. But anyway, I'm no longer scared. Because I remember it was we were coming home from Italy. We were flying United home, and we were flying a 757, and I'm like, that's an older plane. And then I started, I'm like, oh god, to fly an old plane, da, da, da. Like, and it's starting to get there, and To add to all this, I used to always have this reoccurring dream that I'd be on a plane and it starts to, like, you know how it turns, and so then you're at the window and you're looking down to earth. Well, my dream is it would start to go on like this basically spiral down, and I'd be like, oh, this is how it ends. So I'm like, I have this reoccurring plane crash dream, like, oh my God. And I asked myself, like, the quality of our lives are determined by the quality of questions asked, right? I asked myself, I'm like, let's say that's how it ends for you one day, but like you're 95. Do you want to give up a whole life of travel, what you absolutely freaking love, for the fear of that? And it was like a hell no. And like ever since then, it's been I'm like, ah, we're good, which is crazy. I mean, it literally shifted like that.
I think that's how it happens so often is you
Yeah.
just it's those like, in some ways you would look at like a rock bottom, in other ways, you have a brush with your mortality. Like there
Yeah.
are these moments where we have to make these choices and we have to face that fear and we make a choice. And the choice is I choose life or I choose this partner or I choose,
Mhm.
whatever it is that we need. I choose health. I choose, whatever it is that we need to choose in order to change our behavior or manage our behavior.
Yeah.
I think it can be that simple.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, I love it. So this was an unplanned deep dive into joy, but
Yeah.
I mean, so important. I mean, I would love to encourage you guys to look at your life and like, is there anything? What are some questions that people could start to ask themselves? I'm thinking like, is there anything that I'm anxious about or nervous of, or like, where in my life am I choosing safety over something that I think I want, but I'm even scared to admit that I want?
Mhm. So my starting point for this is less about the questions and it's more about creating some really simple habits and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, joy first at its core is about finding, choosing, and sharing joy each day.
Mm-hmm.
So if we create that as a priority, then it means you start to notice when you're not there. You notice when you're anxious, when you're upset, when you're frustrated, and choose that moment to look for. Often you have to actively look for it, and often it looks a lot like gratitude
Mm-hmm.
when you're not in the zone. Look for joy. Where is it right now? Is it in the sky? Is it in my child? Is it
Mm-hmm.
in these super comfy boots I love? Where is it right now?
Mm-hmm.
Anchor into that and then choose it. Choose to focus on that instead of whatever else is happening. For me, I often have to do this when I'm waiting in line because I am a deeply impatient person.
Same.
And I'm like, okay, where's the joy right now? Where is it right now? Find it, find it, find it, find it. And once I find the thing that I can focus on and take a few breaths, really focus on it. Often it is gratitude. Sometimes because I am a photographer, it'll be like, oh my God, this light is so beautiful. And that takes me to a completely different place. Um, but it is about making that conscious choice to shift out of the fear into
Mhm.
something that is, higher vibration, feels better. And the sharing is a really important part of that, and it's intrinsic in the same thing. So if I'm standing in line being an impatient asshole, like everyone around me is feeding off that energy. Whoever is serving, the line is getting that energy back, and making a different choice in that moment, choosing to be joy, feel joy, focus on joy means that I am a much better influence on everyone around me. I'm being much kinder to the person who's stuck in this scenario, helping me. I'm not being that, impatient, annoying, privileged person who just can't stand being inconvenienced, which is not who I want to be in
Right.
life. And so it becomes really exponential and it becomes part of this, what I call an upward spiral of all of us affecting each other. And like you mentioned, laughter, things like smiling, things like laughter, things like kindness. When we're willing to put ourselves out there to give or be or offer these things, they are contagious. They catch
Mhm.
on. And so our little willingness to step out of ourselves then helps this person, which helps that person, which helps those 10 people, which helps those 100 people. And that's how it's done.
Yeah, I love that, and quite frankly, think it's more important now than ever
Yeah,
to focus on that kind of thing of like, what can you do right now in your little circle, your little bubble, like
100%.
make
That's
it
how we're
better.
going to get it done.
Yep.
We've all become very, very clear that we can't change the big stuff. We can't change it on our own. And the reason I'm so passionate about this right now, and the reason I feel like this has been activated in me in the last
Mhm.
couple of years, is because of this joy crisis that we are
Mhm.
in every possible measure, and literally through research, but in our lived experience, we don't need data to tell us that people are unhappy and shit is scary and like all this stuff is going on in the world that makes us feel really unsafe and that we have no control. Like, we have to step out of that. Like,
Mhm.
so much of that we cannot control, and we will never be able to control. So
Mhm.
we have to, first of all, focus on what we can control.
Mhm.
And for me, the starting point of like putting joy first and focusing on finding, choosing, and sharing joy each day is a really good start. And that starts with my little circle. It starts with me internally. How am I being? How am I showing up? Is it how I want to show up? It affects my kids, it affects my husband, it affects my business and my team. And then it steps into the moms that I do drop off with, and then
Mhm.
my small community, and then my friends, and then my online business friends. And then, like, that's enough.
Mhm.
That is enough. We've got to do things like calling our representatives and stuff to be in the resistance if that's aligned for us. But more important than that, we have to be filling ourselves up with joy, because the secret is, if we are so filled up with joy that there's no more room,
Mhm.
the fear cannot take hold.
Mhm.
Fascism doesn't work in a space where joy has taken over. We
Mhm.
just cannot be manipulated by fear. And back to the conversation about marketing and branding, we are so manipulated by fear all the time. That is the number one corporate agenda. That is what marketing does. That is what, politics does. Any kind
Mhm.
of campaign of any kind almost always is aimed at manipulating us through our fear. And if we are in our joy, it just doesn't affect us. We just look at it and go, well, that's dumb,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like, I don't need that. I don't buy into that. I'm not going to be afraid of the other because I'm good. They're good. Like, we don't like it just, there's no space for it.
I love it. I 100% agree. And I think as business owners, we have unique opportunity to choose to live a joy first life for ourselves, but also bringing that into our business. So, what would that look like, just kind of marketing wise, and like what kind of things as photographers should we be looking for of ways to bring joy first into our business?
Yeah, great question. So for me, the way I build brands in particular, but also there's 2 points around this for me. There's the reality that joy feels a lot harder if you're feeling broke, right? If
Mhm.
your basic time, money needs are not sorted out, like the joy
Mhm.
feel thing feels like a much bigger reach. We have to aim for safety first in many cases, or learning how to regulate our nervous system so we can appreciate and be present in joy while also feeling fear, which is
Mhm.
possible. It's not possible with a feeling like happiness, but it is possible with joy. Um, and that we can access joy even when everything isn't perfect is a really helpful skill to survive the struggle of entrepreneurship in general. But for me, in terms of how to build brands in a joy first way, there's like a 3-part framework, and I'll go over it briefly, and then I think there's one area in particular I want to deep dive into. And so that 3-part framework for me is around purpose and meaning, making sure that your brand
Mhm.
and business is rooted in something really purposeful and meaningful, and that you are able to communicate that purchase succinctly. The second piece, and this is often for me the first piece, depending on where someone is at, is product fit. And so that's market fit. That's who's your ideal client. Do you have a niche? Like, do people actually want to pay money for this thing that you're selling? Like, it's all those decision making factors that make what you sell easier to sell and make your customers happy. Um, that for me is the one that people often focus on and never get out of that one.
Mm.
They never reach into the other two because that one feels so hard and confusing. And the third one is very unique to what I do and how I do it. Part of what feeds into my sort of status as a joy expert is my expertise in color psychology and understanding how unconsciously we operate and what a huge tool photography is, and imagery, by the way. Photography is a huge part of this, because we just process things like 60,000 times faster visually than we
Mm.
do by reading. So
Wow.
when people are arguing about marketing and they're arguing about the value of copywriting over the value of photography or branding or color, I'm like, well, listen, maybe in an email where you don't have access to visuals, but I'm telling you, on a website, on a
Yeah.
billboard, in an ad, It's colors, imagery, visuals first, so much faster. The first impression is almost entirely led by the visuals. And so the third piece is around psychological consistency. And that's even harder because nobody teaches us how to speak the language of the unconscious. Color psychology is one of the most powerful tools we
Mm.
have for making people feel a certain way, but we're never taught that.
Right?
And so if your colors are making us feel one way and your images are making us feel another and your copy is saying something different and your pricing is different again, that inconsistency creates mistrust. It creates confusion. It creates
Mhm.
that feeling of like, I think I like this, but there's something I can't put my finger on that makes me not want to get in touch.
Yeah, and it's all on a subconscious level.
Yeah,
Like,
all
yeah,
unconscious.
they'll just, no good first impression, and they move on.
Yep,
Like, they're not saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna reach out to her because that color is not matching with her vibe of her
exactly.
photos and the copy."
It just feels that bit too cold or that bit too
Mhm.
cluttered or that bit too confusing.
Yeah.
And they're like, actually, click. 2
Yep.
seconds, I'm out.
Why are there balloons? We just had balloons on the video, guys, just so you know, we're on Riverside, and I
Riverside likes
somehow
that point, so
somehow I released balloons in the video, which you could have seen. They were very colorful. What does that just brought me joy. Riverside said, "You need some joy. Here's some
you go.
balloons."
Here's some
Like,
color psychology for you.
and they were digital balloons, so I wasn't killing any wildlife with them. So that did bring me joy.
Winning.
Captain America here, Captain Environment. Anyway, um, sorry, I now all okay. I love that. So purpose, product fit, and then that's like what was the last one? Psychological
Psychological consistency.
consistency.
Yep.
Um, that's huge. So you mentioned that one place that people tend to get stuck at and not get outed is product fit. So let's dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So in the past, I've really talked about the difference between building a business and building a brand. And really, what that means is building for just product fit versus building for product fit, purpose, and psychological consistency. A brand is all three. A brand that really gets all the benefits of being a brand, do all three. And what I would call a business just kind of obsesses over product fit, sort of. Like they don't always nail it. Some companies nail it on accident, right? And they make a widget that only they make that people have to buy, and they make billions because of that.
Mhm.
The problem with only competing based on product is that you're really susceptible to all kinds of competition, especially people who are willing to undercut you on price. So for all those photographers out there who are like, another shoot and burn and they're doing it half as good, like that's the reality of focusing on product fit and none of the other stuff is
Mhm.
that it doesn't matter how good your product is. If someone is willing to do the same thing that's as good or mostly as good for cheaper, you're done, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so hard to hold on to any of your market share. So really there's a lot of pieces of this that are really important. I know you're an expert in pricing, and pricing is a really really huge part of this, getting your pricing right, especially in the context of the entire landscape. Understanding your ideal client, we're hearing about all the time how important that is, finding a niche, what I would call a micro niche or your niche within your niche. So for
Mhm.
pet photographers, I've been saying for years that being a pet photographer is not enough. It was in 2005 when there was like
Mhm.
5 of us in the whole country, but like it's not enough anymore. So like what is your niche within that niche? It's not enough to talk about just the relationship between the dog and the
Mhm.
person anymore. And that was true with all the other pet brands I served as well. They're like, "Oh, well we care about the relationship between dogs and their people." I'm like, you and every other pet brand, like you're gonna have to do better than that. Like it's not
Mhm.
enough.
Mhm.
Being in the pet industry is not enough of a niche. That is your industry. That is not your niche. So there's a lot of pieces of this that are really important, but the one that's feeling so important to me right now, this has been true for a long time, but I think when the world starts to feel even more unstable and even more unsafe, and people start, cutting back on their spending and whatever, I really worry about the businesses who are selling pleasure, joy, luxury, because the people who buy that at the top don't stop spending. Like, let's be
Mhm.
honest,
Yeah,
like,
right.
we're still buying the stuff that we're buying
Yep, yep.
anyway, right? We're not cutting back on spending. But the people in the middle and the lower side of that do. And people also have fear around like reading the room, and they're like, can
Mhm.
I really sell something quote unquote expensive right now when all this
Mhm.
shit is going on? And so it really messes with your confidence. for being in that sales, being in the communication. And sometimes, let's face it, it isn't right. There's been so many times in the last 12, 18 months, also back in 2020, where you're scrolling through your feed and you're looking at all this social justice stuff happening, or you're looking at war, you're looking at horrific things going on, and then someone's ad pops up for something really inconsequential, and you're like, ooh, sense the tone, babe.
Yeah, right, right.
So you never know what people are experiencing in their feed, and that can be really off-putting. And so some of these fears are real. And so the thing that I'm really trying to shout from the mountaintops right now is, if you have a business where you focus primarily on B2C, so serving um, consumers, serving people, families, kids, moms, whatever, it is going to be much easier for you, in my experience and opinion, if you look at getting very quickly into your business some sort of revenue stream that serves B2B, that sells to businesses,
Mhm.
because they're easy to find, they're easier to sell to, there's an ROI on what you do for them. And it can be a way to not only bolster your confidence, but also pad out your sales and your sales funnel and all those sales activities, so that you feel safer from a financial standpoint while you ride out all the rest of the stuff from
Mhm.
the consumer standpoint.
Yeah, no, those are really great points. And, like you said, like usually the people at the top are still spending. I mean, we saw that during COVID, right? It was like all of a sudden everybody had more discretionary income because most people that were like, professional career level people, they still had the same amount of money, but they weren't going anywhere to spend it. They weren't going out to eat. They canceled all their vacations. So they were like, let's redo our house. Let's do this. Let's spend all this money on these other things.
Yep.
It's, yeah, the people in the middle and the people at the bottom that tend to suffer the most generally in these types of situations. But that being said, marketing to them, like you said, all those different psychological things. And I hear so many people, I work with so many photographers that have so much, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Just concern, or maybe they're not truly believing in the worth of what they sell. And it takes a while as a photographer to finally get the direct feedback from your client of just how incredible the gift that you gave to them was, like how much value your services provide them, because it's usually after the dog has passed, after the kids have grown up and left the house. Like it takes decades sometimes for them to get the true ROI of what we've done for them. So I'm not saying that what we do isn't worth it. I'm just saying it takes a while to see that return on investment, where if you're marketing to another business, they see it like that quarter. They can see an immediate return. And so sometimes it becomes a little bit easier psychologically from a selling perspective, making offers to people perspective, because you're not selling directly to somebody, and them saying no isn't necessarily about, like, it's easy for our brain to say, oh, I offered my services to this private person, that private person said no, that private person said no because they hate me, or that person thinks I'm outrageously priced, or whatever it is. But then you go to a business and that business says no, it's like, oh, well, it just wasn't in the budget for them this round. Which could be the same thing for the person. I have so many clients that have reached out to me, said no, they can't do it right now, but then come back 2 or 3 years later after they save. So it just becomes, I think, a little bit easier because you short circuit like so much of your worthiness in the answer, which we should not have any of our worthiness in the answer, but we just are
Mm.
human, so we do.
Yeah, there's so much in this topic. And obviously, as people who've been in this business a long time and have talked to thousands and thousands of other people in this business, you know, the understanding that we have for this experience is so deep, right? We've had it
Mhm.
personally. We've been with so many people in this experience in their own lives. And like, on the downside, the work never ends, right? Like, you raise your price, you have the fear again, you raise it again, you have the fear again. People tell you you're expensive. And there's a couple things I want to share around this because I think it's really important. And then I want to dive into something else. But and I know on one hand you have to experience this for yourself for it to really hit home for you. Like I'm aware of that. It's like people who tell you like, "Oh, it's not about the money and money doesn't buy happiness." I'm like, "Easy to say when you're rich,
Right,
right?" Like,
exactly.
you gotta have to get there yourself and then be like, "Oh, I see what they mean." Yeah. Um, but the thing I wanna say that I cannot emphasize enough is that I have worked in so many different businesses, in so many different business models, in so many different price points, in so many different countries and states and verticals, and I've worked in billion-dollar brands, and I've worked in tiny little startups. It is just as easy to sell something for $25,000 as it is to sell something for $250 or $25. It
Mhm,
is just as easy, and in my experience, it is actually easier to sell the most expensive thing. The way you sell that thing is often different, and it's often easier. And this continues to blow my mind, like, it continues to blow my mind. And you made a point about value, and ultimately, it's like beauty, right? Like, value's in the eye of the beholder, and I think we get all spun around because, like, we don't know what other people value, and we're like,
mhm,
"Oh, will they value?" We're constantly looking for this validation that, like, we are worthy, our work is good, and if that is the way you operate, you will probably never be validated. You will probably never feel like your work is good. So what I wanna say is that that validation is gonna have to come from inside. It's gonna have to come from experience of doing your research and honing your craft and trial and error and your 10,000 hours and continuing to just do it and do it and do it and not feel
mhm,
sorry for yourself and play the victim and all that. You just have to keep showing up, keep asking yourself questions about how to get better and keep getting better. Some people will think you're worth it, some people won't. Some people would be willing to pay you 10,000 for it, some people wouldn't pay you a dollar, and that is just how it is. So separating all of that from, whether or not you deserve anything or
mhm,
whether you're a good person, like that is the work, right? That is the journey of all of this pricing stuff. What I think is true about B2B versus B2C is exactly what you said about taking it so personally. But when you actually learn about sales and marketing, separate from the business model, separate from photography, separate from B2C, B2B, when you learn about sales, you understand very quickly that it's a numbers game. And there's very specific numbers that typically play out. So, typically, if you're trying to sell something to a cold audience, someone who's never ever seen you or heard from you before, a 2% conversion rate, 2% of the number of people who see it, buying it, that's a good conversion rate. 2%. So that's 2
mhm.
people out of 100, right? That's the number. And nobody ever teaches us this as pet photographers. So we're like, "I had 100 people to my site this year and I didn't get any inquiries. Like, what is going on?" Like, numbers. Your numbers need to be higher. This is not emotional. This is a practical numbers issue. And when you sell something luxury or premium, that percentage goes down, down, down. You're looking more likely at like a 0.5% conversion rate from cold traffic. And then you have to add in the sales cycle, which is the
Mhm,
amount of time it takes someone to make a purchasing decision. And for something like pet photography, that sales cycle is often very, very long. If they're not
mhm,
actively looking for a photographer right now, happening upon you, discovering you, like it could be 2, 3 years, like you said, until they
mhm,
actually want to book with you.
mhm,
That's normal. You're not doing anything wrong, that's just it, and so the model of pet photography is inherently challenging. Just like it is when you're selling something with joy instead of fear. It's inherently harder, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, and it doesn't mean it's not worth it, and it doesn't mean you can't be successful. It just means you need to have conversations with yourself about what is realistic and what you need to do to see improvement. And in most cases, it is literally a numbers game. And what
mhm,
I think is true about B2B is that it's easier to get and find the numbers, and it's easier to be proactive in going out and finding those numbers. You can
mhm.
go make a list of 100 businesses you'd love to work for, and you can get in touch with all of them. That's really hard to do with private clients, right? It
Mhm.
allows you to be proactive about sales and outreach in a way that's just really hard B2C.
Yeah, 100%. And the B2C piece, I mean, that's where the name of the game is like numbers and leads. There's so many people I talk to, like, I'm not getting anything. What am I doing? Like, what? I'm like, what are you doing to market? Like, I'm just posting on social. And like, you need leads to come into your business and onto your email list. And yeah, with
Email
B2B,
list?
yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah. I know B2B, you can just like actually reach out to them. Like, B2C, it would be like a door-to-door salesman, which don't do. That's
Don't
creepy
do
and
that.
weird. But it's kind of accepted in B2B because you're reaching out to businesses to serve them in a way that will help them earn more business. You just
Yeah.
want to do it in a non-pushy, slimy way.
Yep.
So, anyway, if you're interested in learning more about that business to business conversion, and it doesn't have to be business to business, but you need other revenue streams. Like, I implore you, no matter what your business is, to just look at other revenue streams. Could be different types of session, could be serving different people. Maybe you are also a web designer or a dog trainer or like whatever it is. Like, what do you love to do? Having multiple revenue streams is not a bad thing. And that doesn't mean you're not all in on your business. It just means you're living your life in a way that has a little redundancy and also is a way that you find more things that you love. So anyway, if you're curious some more of this B2B conversation, jump on over to hairofthedogacademy.com/commercial. We're going to be doing some fun free trainings for you guys to help let you explore that a little bit more. So definitely check that out. But this conversation has been so good
It's
and
not what I expected, and I thought it was
no, went
great.
so much deeper into just so many things that are applicable to literally all of us. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And Nick, let everybody know where they can find you. You guys let her know what joy you're finding in your life.
That's one of my favorite questions to ask people right now is where's joy for you right now? Yeah, so you can find me at joyfirstworld.com, and you can find me on Instagram at Nichole Smith, and my Nick has an H in it, so it's JNICHOLESMITH on Insta. And yeah, hit me up in the DMs and let me know what's bringing you joy right now. I would love to hear from you.
Sourdough is bringing me joy.
Sourdough. You guys, okay. So I also host a podcast. It's called Joy First, and Nicole will be a guest on there. I'm not sure if it's airing before or after this episode, but you will have to go to Joy First podcast and look for the episode with Nicole because we had a whole rant about sourdough and loads of other joyful things. You'll love it. Go check it out.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.